Snoop Dogg is an iconic name in the music industry, as is his friend and former producer, Dr. Dre. But many don't know just how amazing Snoop Dogg's story really is. From broke and living in a car, writing raps to win prison battles, to sleeping on Dr. Dre's studio floor while producing their hit record Doggystyle, Snoop's story of coming up is truly inspiring. But before we dive in any further, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so we don't have to drink gin and juice from an empty milk container. Today's story begins Snoop Dogg, then 17-year-old Calvin Broadus Jr. gets kicked out of his mother's house when he started to get into illegal activities. This series of events eventually led Snoop to skip college, in which he had the opportunity to go to many as he was an impressive multi-sport athlete. Instead, he started selling drugs on the street, eventually landing him in jail at 18 years old. Snoop then discusses walking a fine line in prison, how prison life was for him on the inside, and how he was able to ultimately survive it. If normal prison life wasn't stressful enough, you can imagine the pressure of having to battle rap for your gang. Snoop decides to use this time to mold his craft, and also talks about how even in a system as divisive as prison, rapping was able to bring all the races together. When Snoop finally gets out of prison, he discusses how he first met Dr. Dre through his good friend and fellow artist, Warren G. And if it wasn't enough for Warren G to first hook him up with Dre, Snoop also reveals how Warren saved him from throwing away his life's work and convinced him to stay the course during a hard time when Snoop almost threw it all away. After Dr. Dre gets a few listens of Snoop Dogg's rough work, he asked Warren G to set him up on a phone call with Snoop. When Dre finally calls him for the first time, Snoop was in such complete disbelief that he hung up on Dre, thinking it to be a prank. When Snoop finally makes it to Dre's studio for the first time, he describes being nervous, but making a strong impact on Dre while having to rap for him over a beat in a truly make-or-break moment in Snoop's life. Snoop then talks about the early days recording with Dre at his home studio in Calabasas. The imagery of the story he paints is amazing and really goes to show how far these two have come from the days when they were literally bootstrapping the groundbreaking music that was ultimately created. But things would get worse for Snoop before they got better, as he accidentally violated his parole and landed back in jail. And while most producers, partners, and people in general would be quick to throw you overboard in that situation, Dre stood by his side. Snoop describes how Dre would accept his phone calls and play him beats to write lyrics to while inside. One of those songs ended up being their very first hit, Ain't Nothing But a G Thing. When Snoop finally gets out of jail for the second time, he decides to turn his life around, devoting his entire focus to making Dr. Dre the biggest producer in the world. With this type of dedication and effort, it wasn't long before Snoop and Dre were cranking out hits left and right, starting with the song What's My Name, which also has a funny story behind it. When Dre and Snoop finally come up with their first worldwide smash hit, Gin and Juice, Snoop was still living with Dre and tells the story about how it was written, illustrating just how real and close to home these songs were for the two young men at the time. But even after the song went nuclear, Snoop still talks about not being able to get into certain clubs even when they were first playing this hit. Even when they were playing his hit. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.